I never imagined I'd become the kind of man who documents his wife's every lie in color-coded spreadsheets. For 15 years, I'd been Nathan Kowalski, structural engineer, devoted husband, the guy who trusted without question. But standing in that gleaming corporate lobby on October 13th, holding wilted roses and cold Italian food, I discovered that my entire marriage had been built on foundations as false as a forged blueprint. The morning had started with such promise. I'd taken the day off from Stevenson Engineering specifically to surprise Rachel for our anniversary. She'd been drowning in work lately. Her position as senior marketing analyst at Brennan and Associates had become a pressure cooker since their merger with Clemson Media Group 6 months ago. Every morning she'd leave before sunrise, her coffee traveling mug clutched like a lifeline, her laptop bag weighing down her shoulder. Every evening she'd return after 8, sometimes 9, exhausted and distracted, picking at dinner while answering emails on her phone. "The Peterson campaign is killing me," she'd said just last week, rubbing her temples. "Marcus wants 3 different demographic analyses by Friday, and Linda from Creative keeps changing the visual requirements." I'd made sympathetic noises, poured her wine, massaged her shoulders. Good husband things. Supportive husband things. Stupid husband things, as it turned out. 2 weeks before our anniversary, I'd called her assistant Rebecca to coordinate the surprise. "I want to bring her lunch from Salvatore's," I'd explained. "That Italian place where we had our first date." "Oh, Mr. Kowalski, that's so romantic," Rebecca had gushed with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. "She'll absolutely love that. I'll make sure her calendar is clear from noon to 2. You're sure she doesn't have any critical meetings?" "Positive. I'll guard that time slot with my life." That enthusiasm should have been my first warning. Corporate assistants don't usually get that excited about lunch surprises. But I was too focused on my plan to notice the oddity. I'd ordered all Rachel's favorites from Salvatore's. The chicken marsala she always chose, the Caesar salad with extra anchovies that I pretended not to find disgusting, the tiramisu that she'd claim she was too full for then eat most of anyway. $47 worth of nostalgia packed in plastic containers. The Brennan and Associates building dominated a corner of downtown Pittsburgh's Golden Triangle, 30 floors of blue-tinted glass that reflected the October sky. I hadn't visited in over a year. Rachel had always discouraged it. "You know how corporate culture is," she'd explained. "They notice everything. Better if the partners think I'm completely devoted to work, not having lunch dates with my husband." I'd understood. My own firm had similar unspoken rules about personal life bleeding into professional space. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of space designed to intimidate and impress. I approached the security desk with my bags and flowers, feeling slightly underdressed in my khakis and polo shirt. The guard, a middle-aged black man whose name tag read Curtis, looked up with a practiced smile. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Rachel Kowalski in marketing." 15th floor. Curtis's fingers clicked across his keyboard. The smile faded slightly. He typed again, leaning closer to his screen. Then he picked up his phone, dialing a 3-digit extension. "Hey, Tom? Can you check something for me?" He spoke quietly, but I caught fragments. "Kowalski. Marketing. Yeah, that's what I'm showing too." My stomach began a slow descent. Curtis hung up and gestured to a seating area. "Sir, would you mind waiting over there for just a moment? I need to verify something with HR." "Is there a problem?" I asked, though I already knew there was. "Just a small confusion with our system. Won't take but a minute." 15 minutes passed. 20. The Italian food grew cold. The roses seemed to wilt in the artificial air. Finally, a woman in a charcoal suit approached with measured steps, the walk of someone about to deliver very bad news. Mr. Kowalski, I'm Jennifer Liu from Human Resources. Her handshake was firm but somehow sympathetic. Could we speak privately for a moment? She led me to a small conference room just off the lobby. Through the glass walls, I could see people streaming through the turnstiles, heading to lunch, living their normal lives while mine was about to shatter. Mr. Kowalski, I'm afraid there's been some confusion, Jennifer began carefully. Rachel Kowalski was employed here until February 15th of this year. Her position was eliminated during our merger restructuring. She received our standard severance package, 6 months of salary continuation, which concluded in August. The words hit me like discovering a crack in a foundation. At first, you can't quite process what it means for the whole structure. That's impossible, I heard myself say. She was here this morning. She comes here every day. Jennifer's expression shifted from professional sympathy to genuine concern. Mr. Kowalski, I can assure you that Rachel hasn't badged into this building since February. Our security system is quite precise. But her paychecks, she's still getting paid. The severance would have appeared as regular direct deposits through August, but that was 2 months ago. She paused, studying my face. Mr. Kowalski, would you like me to call someone for you? A friend or family member? No, I managed. No, I need to think. Jennifer walked me back to the lobby, her hand hovering near my elbow like she thought I might collapse. Curtis, the security guard, watched with the expression of someone who'd just witnessed a car accident. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 30 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to make sense of the impossible. 8 months. Rachel had been pretending to go to work for 8 months. Every morning, she'd dressed in her business clothes. Every evening, she'd complained about projects and coworkers. 8 months of elaborate theater, and I'd been the only audience member who didn't know it was a show. With shaking hands, I pulled up our banking app on my phone. There they were. Bi-weekly deposits in the exact amount of Rachel's salary. But looking closer, I saw what I'd never bothered to notice. Through August, they'd come from Brennan and Associates. After August, they came from a different account, transfers, not direct deposits. I called my office, told them I had food poisoning, and drove home in a daze. Our house, a 4-bedroom colonial in Shadyside that we'd bought 5 years ago, looked different somehow. Like when you notice a painting has been hanging crooked for months. Inside, I went straight to Rachel's home office, a converted bedroom she'd claimed for when I need to work from home. Her laptop was there, closed, password protected. But we shared an old desktop in the kitchen that we used for household stuff. Bills, taxes, shopping. That machine held secrets Rachel thought she'd deleted. I downloaded recovery software, the kind we used at the firm when someone accidentally deleted project files. Within an hour, I'd found the breadcrumbs of a massive deception. A hidden email account. The inbox was a revelation that made me physically ill. There were hundreds of emails with coworkers. Rebecca, Tom from accounting, Linda from creative, Marcus the demanding boss. But the IP addresses told a different story. They all originated from the same location, and it wasn't downtown. It was a residential address in Squirrel Hill. I knew that address. Marcus Perez lived there. Marcus. The smooth-talking consultant who'd left Brennan 2 years ago to start his own firm. The man who'd always stood too close to Rachel at company parties, whose compliments always seemed to carry extra weight, whose wife Alexandra had always watched him with tight-lipped suspicion at corporate events. The emails revealed everything in corporate speak that barely disguised its true meaning. Ready for our afternoon strategy session meant something very different from business planning. The presentation went perfectly. The client was very satisfied, took on new significance when cross-referenced with credit card charges at the Fairmont Hotel downtown. Working late on the Morrison campaign, aligned with nights I'd eaten alone, believing my wife was climbing the corporate ladder when she was actually climbing into another man's bed. I found the financial structure buried in attachments. Marcus was paying Rachel $3,000 monthly as a consulting retainer for his firm, Perez Strategic Solutions. The contract was legitimate, technically legal, but the work product was non-existent. She was being paid to be available during business hours, just not for marketing analysis. My engineering mind began cataloging evidence with the same precision I used for structural assessments. Every email, every timestamp, every financial transaction. I created spreadsheets, cross-referenced calendars, built timelines. If my marriage was going to collapse, I'd document every crack, every failure point, every piece of debris. The photo cloud revealed more than I wanted to see but couldn't look away from. Pictures of Rachel at Marcus's house during work hours, wearing casual clothes, sometimes less. Pictures from the business trips to Cleveland and Philadelphia, actually romantic getaways where they'd registered as Mr. and Mrs. Perez. In one photo, she wore lingerie I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary, pieces she'd told me were uncomfortable when I'd asked why she never wore them. I found a draft email that made everything clear. After the holidays, I'll tell Nathan that Brennan is downsizing again. I'll be devastated. Lean on him for support. You reach out with a legitimate job offer. Make it look like you're doing us a favor. We work together openly, grow closer, professionally. By next summer, I'll tell him we've grown apart. He's so conflict-averse, he'll probably be relieved. We'll have a quick, quiet divorce and nobody has to be the villain. She'd even scripted conversations. Nathan, I feel like we've become roommates more than spouses. Maybe some time apart would help us both figure out what we really want. You deserve someone who can give you the attention you need. Each line crafted to make me feel guilty, to make the divorce seem mutual, to ensure I'd be generous in the settlement. The infrastructure of their deception was staggering. They used a project management app called Asana to coordinate their lies. Every fake meeting, every fictional deadline, every pretend crisis, all managed with corporate efficiency. They'd turned adultery into a business operation with deliverables and milestones. I discovered Rachel had rented space at a co-working facility called The Hub downtown, paying $400 monthly in cash. She went there some mornings to maintain the illusion of a commute. Security footage I'd later obtained showed her arriving in business attire, changing in the bathroom, leaving through the back exit in casual clothes. She'd return before 5, change back, and leave through the front looking appropriately exhausted from a day of fictional labor. The journal I found hidden in her car was the worst part. October 2nd. Nathan asked about the Peterson campaign again, made up details about focus groups. He nodded along, so trusting. Sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember how he didn't even notice when I stopped wearing my wedding ring to work 2 months ago. September 15th. Marcus makes me feel alive in ways Nathan never could. N is so predictable. Every Tuesday he suggests Chinese takeout. Every Friday he asks if I want to watch a movie. Every Sunday he makes pancakes. I could set my watch by his routines. Marcus is spontaneous, dangerous, exciting. August 29th. The money is getting tight with severance ending, but Marcus found a solution. As long as Nathan doesn't check the account details, we're fine. He never does. In 15 years, he's never once questioned a financial statement. That last entry stung the most. She was right. I'd never questioned anything. Complete trust had been my contribution to our marriage. Complete betrayal had been hers. I sat in our living room that night, surrounded by printed emails and bank statements, and made a decision. Rachel wanted excitement. She'd get consequences, but not the dramatic confrontation she probably expected if caught. No screaming, no begging, no crime of passion that would make her the victim. I would dismantle her life the way I'd oversee the demolition of a condemned building, methodically, legally, completely. The first step was protecting myself legally. I interviewed 3 divorce attorneys before settling on Marjorie Stevens, a 60-year-old former prosecutor who'd transitioned to family law. Adultery in Pennsylvania can affect asset division, she explained, reviewing my documentation. But this financial fraud, that's what will really matter. Judges hate being lied to, and they hate financial deception even more. How much can I document before filing? I asked. As much as you can stomach. Every piece of evidence strengthens our position. But Mr. Kowalski, are you sure you don't want to try counseling first? She's been lying for 8 months. Counseling requires honesty. Marjorie nodded slowly. Then document everything. And I mean everything. I hired a forensic accountant named Dale Morrison who approached numbers the way I approached load-bearing calculations. Within 2 weeks, he'd traced $147,000 in misappropriated marital funds over 8 months. She's been sloppy, Dale explained, showing me spreadsheets that would have been beautiful if they weren't documenting betrayal. Cash withdrawals every Monday for the co-working space, transfers to hide spending on trips, credit card charges at hotels during work hours. It's textbook dissipation of marital assets. Is it enough? Enough? Mr. Kowalski, I've seen divorces turn on a quarter of this evidence. For the IRS angle, I consulted a tax attorney named Robert Huang. Marcus billing Rachel's payments as business expenses when no actual work is performed. That's fraud. The IRS doesn't care about affairs, but they care very much about fake business deductions. I filed Form 3949-A with detailed documentation. Robert warned me the investigation could take over a year. The IRS moves slowly but thoroughly. Like erosion, you don't see it happening, but eventually, the whole cliff falls into the sea. Perfect. I didn't need immediate satisfaction. I needed complete destruction. While building my legal case, I began a psychological campaign. I started asking about Rachel's work more often, watching her weave increasingly elaborate lies. How's the Peterson campaign progressing? I asked over dinner one Tuesday. Chinese takeout, as she'd predicted. Oh, you know, she said, twirling lo mein with studied casualness. Marcus is being demanding as always. He wants 3 different demographic analyses by Friday. That's a lot of work. What demographics? A pause. A calculation. Women 25 to 34, college-educated suburban families, and senior citizens interested in healthcare. I nodded, making mental notes. The Peterson campaign had ended 6 months ago. I'd looked it up. Maybe I could help, I offered. I did some statistical analysis in college. No, too quick, too sharp. She softened. I mean, thank you, honey, but it's proprietary information. client confidentiality and all that. Of course, but maybe I could bring you lunch tomorrow. Save you a trip out. The security's gotten really strict since the merger, she deflected. Visitors need special clearance now. Takes weeks to approve. That's quite a change from when I visited last year. Everything's changed since the merger. She stood abruptly, clearing plates that were still half full. I'm going to review some files before bed. I watched her retreat to her home office, where she'd spend 2 hours crafting fake emails to support her fiction, not knowing I was documenting every lie in a spreadsheet with timestamps and cross-references. The next phase involved Marcus's business. I created anonymous Glassdoor reviews for Perez Strategic Solutions. Nothing defamatory, just concerns. Questionable billing practices. Lack of transparency in client charges. Owner's personal expenses billed to client accounts. Within a month, 3 potential clients had backed out of contracts. Marcus's LinkedIn posts about exciting new partnerships dwindled to nothing. I also initiated couples therapy, framing it as concern about my own work stress affecting our marriage. I think it would help us communicate better, I told Rachel one evening. Dr. Patterson comes highly recommended. She couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. Every Thursday at 6, we sat in Dr. Patterson's beige office, discussing trust and communication while Rachel performed the role of concerned wife. I feel like we're stronger than ever, I said during our 4th session. The foundation of any marriage is complete honesty, don't you think, honey? Rachel's smile was so tight I thought her face might crack. Absolutely, complete honesty. It's wonderful to see such commitment to transparency, Dr. Patterson beamed, unaware she was facilitating torture by irony. The sessions were excruciating for Rachel. She had to discuss our honest relationship, our open communication, our mutual trust while living a complete lie. I watched her exhaust herself maintaining the facade, developing tension headaches that were absolutely real from the stress of performing authenticity. My masterstroke was beginning to plan our 20th anniversary, still 5 years away. I created Pinterest boards, bookmarked venues, discussed guest lists with an enthusiasm that bordered on obsessive. I found the perfect place, I told her one Saturday, showing her photos of a vineyard in Napa. They have a 5-year waiting list, but I got us on it. We could renew our vows, really recommit to each other. 5 years is a long time, she said weakly. But that's what marriage is, right? Planning a future together. Building something permanent. She had to smile, had to agree, had to participate in planning a future she knew was false. I made her look at color swatches for bridesmaids' dresses, taste cake samples I'd ordered online, discuss whether we'd write new vows or repeat our original ones. Maybe we should write new ones, I suggested. Really express how our love has grown and evolved, how we've become more honest with each other over time. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly. That sounds meaningful. Meanwhile, my documentation grew. I had spreadsheets tracking her supposed work schedule against her actual location, obtained through her phone's location sharing, which she'd forgotten we'd enabled years ago. Charts showing cash withdrawals aligned with co-working space payments. Graphs demonstrating the correlation between late meetings and hotel charges on Marcus's credit card, obtained through a contact in banking who owed me a favor. I filed for divorce on December 15th, exactly 2 months after discovering the deception. But I didn't seek a quick resolution. Instead, I requested extensive discovery. depositions, financial records, employment verification, the legal equivalent of death by 1,000 paper cuts. Rachel was served at the co-working space she thought was secret. The process server later told my attorney that she'd gone pale, then red, then pale again. How? Was all she'd said. When she came home that night, I was cooking dinner. Salmon with asparagus, her favorite. Nathan, she started, divorce papers clutched in her hand. Dinner's almost ready, I said pleasantly. We should eat before it gets cold. We can discuss logistics afterward. Logistics? Nathan, what is this about? It's about dissolution of marriage based on adultery and financial fraud. Wine? I don't understand. You never said anything was wrong. I'm saying it now, through appropriate legal channels. She sank into a kitchen chair. Can we talk about this? We can talk through our attorneys. I think that would be most productive. Nathan, please, 15 years. 8 months, I corrected. You've been lying for 8 months. That negates 15 years rather efficiently. The discovery phase was brutal for Rachel. Under oath, she had to provide pay stubs she didn't have. Marcus's employees, who'd been told they were helping a woman in a difficult situation, admitted they'd been asked to lie. The co-working space provided records showing her actual presence versus her claimed work schedule. During her deposition, Rachel's attorney tried to minimize the damage. Mrs. Kowalski admits to errors in judgment regarding her employment status. Errors in judgment? Marjorie responded. She created a fictional email account, rented office space to maintain deception, and accepted $24,000 in payments for work never performed. That's not an error. That's fraud. Marcus's deposition was even more damaging. Trying to protect himself from IRS scrutiny, he threw Rachel under the bus. She said she needed to maintain appearances for personal reasons, he claimed. I was trying to help a friend in need. A friend you were sleeping with? Marjorie asked. That developed later. How much later? I don't recall exactly. Marjorie produced hotel receipts from a year ago. Does this refresh your memory? Marcus's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The affair had predated the job loss. Rachel hadn't turned to Marcus in desperation. She'd been with him already. The IRS audit of Marcus's company began 6 months after my report. It wasn't dramatic. No agents with guns drawn. Just accountants with calculators who methodically found $67,000 in fraudulent deductions. His business hemorrhaged clients as word spread through Pittsburgh's business community. Professional insurance dropped him. 3 major contracts terminated. The marketing community discovered Rachel's deception gradually. Someone from Brennan and Associates mentioned to someone at another firm that Rachel Kowalski hadn't worked there in almost a year. That person mentioned it to another person. LinkedIn connections began disappearing. Networking events stopped including her. The Women in Marketing Pittsburgh chapter quietly removed her from their board. There was no single moment of revelation, just a slow exile from professional circles. Her reputation eroded like limestone in acid rain, slowly, inevitably, completely. During a particularly brutal day of depositions, Rachel broke down. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she sobbed. How was it supposed to happen? Marjorie asked, not unkindly. I don't know, just not with lawyers and accountants and courts. Marcus said it would be simple. Simple? I spoke for the first time in hours. You created an entire fictional universe. You had spreadsheets to track your lies. That's not simple. That's corporate-level deception. I just wanted to feel something, she said, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. You don't understand what it's like, being married to someone who treats life like an engineering project. And you don't understand what it's like being married to someone who treats marriage like community theater. Our daughter Emma came home from college for spring break in the middle of the divorce proceedings. She was 20, studying environmental science at Carnegie Mellon, smart enough to know something was wrong the moment she walked through the door. "Why is Mom sleeping in the guest room?" she asked me the first night. "We're having some difficulties." "What kind of difficulties?" I handed her a folder containing the basic divorce filing, minus the most salacious details. She read it slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to rage. 8 months? She looked up at me. She lied about her job for 8 months? Yes. But I shaped my whole college plan around not ending up like her. Stressed, overworked, no work-life balance. Emma's voice cracked. And it was all fake? Rachel tried to explain the next morning over breakfast. "Emma, sweetie, the stress was real. Just different from what I said." "Different? You mean from lying? From cheating? From stealing money?" "I didn't steal. $147,000 in marital assets misappropriated," Emma quoted from the filing. "That's stealing, Mom." Emma moved into my apartment. I'd rented a two-bedroom in Lawrenceville during the divorce proceedings, leaving Rachel in the house temporarily. She visited her mother weekly, but their relationship had fundamentally changed. The mother Emma had admired for her career success had never existed. The financial forensics revealed more as the months passed. Marcus had been claiming the payments to Rachel as business expenses, reducing his tax liability by nearly $15,000. The IRS added penalties and interest that would eventually total over $200,000. His ex-wife Alexandra, who discovered the affair and divorced him, cooperated fully with my attorney, providing emails and texts that showed the relationship had been going on for 2 years, not 8 months. "She was never special to him," Alexandra told me during a phone call. "Just the current one. There were 2 others during our marriage. Rachel was just the one who believed his promises." The divorce settlement came 14 months after that October afternoon. Pennsylvania law doesn't do dramatic splits. Even with adultery and fraud, Rachel didn't leave with nothing, but the settlement reflected her deception. I kept the house, though she received 20% of equity, $67,000 instead of 50%, $167,500. Retirement accounts split 70-30 in my favor, recognizing her dissipation of assets. No alimony due to adultery and her capable earning potential. She had to repay $73,500, half the misappropriated funds, over 5 years, each party responsible for their own attorney fees. Hers reached $45,000. She emerged with roughly $125,000 from a marriage worth over $800,000. With debts and attorney fees, she'd struggle financially for years. Marcus and Rachel's relationship couldn't survive the pressure. The IRS penalties drained his wealth. Lost clients meant downsizing from his Squirrel Hill showpiece to a cramped apartment in Millvale. Rachel discovered emails showing 2 other women he'd made similar promises to during his marriage. Their grand romance dissolved into mutual recrimination within 3 months of the divorce being finalized. "You destroyed everything," Rachel accused during our final meeting to transfer property titles. "No," I corrected, signing papers with steady hands. "I documented everything you destroyed. There's a difference. You're enjoying this," she said bitterly. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm completing a necessary process, like demolishing a structurally unsound building. It's not pleasant, but it's essential for safety. She found work eventually, customer service for a software company called TechFlow, making $45,000 annually. Background checks revealed the divorce details, making marketing positions impossible. The co-working space sued for fraud, settling for $15,000 she'd pay over 3 years. I'm nobody now, she told Emma during one of their awkward dinners. 15 years building a career. Gone. You had a career, Emma replied. You threw it away for an affair. That's not Dad's fault. 3 years after the divorce, I remarried. Sarah was a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital who'd researched me thoroughly before our first date. I read the court documents, she admitted over coffee at a cafe in Bakery Square. All 347 pages. And you still came? I appreciated how you handled it. No violence, no stalking, no harassment. Just methodical documentation and legal process. She smiled. Plus, any man who can maintain color-coded spreadsheets of deception for 14 months has attention to detail I can respect. We maintained separate finances for the first year, then gradually combined them with complete transparency. Every business trip was verified. Every late night at the hospital accounted for. It lacked mystery, but possessed something more valuable: verifiable truth. Rachel wrote me a letter 4 years after the divorce. Nathan, I know you think you won, and legally you did. But we both lost. I lost everything trying to feel alive in a dead marriage. You lost years married to someone who wasn't really there. Marcus lost his business for a relationship built on lies. Everyone lost. The fake job felt more real than our real marriage. That's the tragedy. Not that I lied, but that the lie felt more authentic than the truth. The person I was with Marcus, the person planning campaigns and managing accounts, that felt like the real me. The person making small talk over Chinese takeout with you, that was the performance. I'm nobody now, but at least I'm honestly nobody instead of pretending to be somebody. I didn't respond. She still didn't understand. She'd had choices every day for 8 months. Small decisions to tell the truth, to end the affair, to admit the job loss, to seek counseling, to ask for a divorce honestly. Instead, she'd chosen deception so elaborate it required project management software to maintain. I kept one artifact from the marriage, her fake business card from her continued employment at Brennan and Associates. Marcus had printed them for her to maintain the deception. High-quality cardstock, embossed letters, even a QR code that linked to a fake LinkedIn profile. I kept it in my desk drawer as a reminder that deception could be sophisticated, that trust required verification, that even loving relationships could harbor elaborate lies. The Brennan and Associates building still stands downtown. Sometimes I pass it with Sarah and she squeezes my hand, knowing the significance. Curtis, the security guard, retired, but I heard he still tells the story of the husband who discovered his wife hadn't worked there in 8 months. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd confronted her immediately? Sarah asked once as we drove past. She would have cried, apologized, promised to change, I said. Maybe we'd have tried counseling. Maybe she'd have been more careful with the next affair. But the documentation, that changed everything. Not just the divorce settlement, but Emma's understanding. She needed to see the truth laid out in depositions and bank statements. Otherwise, she'd have always wondered if I was the villain in Mom's story. The last payment of Rachel's court-ordered restitution processed 5 years after discovery. $73,500 returned over 60 monthly installments, each one a reminder of betrayal but also of justice. The payments came from her checking account at PNC Bank, automated transfers on the 15th of each month. I tracked them in a spreadsheet, not from obsession but from habit. Engineers document everything. Marcus's consultancy survived but remained diminished. The IRS penalties took 7 years to pay. His ex-wife Alexandra's Medium article, "My Husband's Other Women, A Timeline of Deception," went viral in business circles, getting 2.3 million views and ensuring his reputation remained toxic. He worked alone now, unable to afford employees who might enable another deception. His LinkedIn profile claimed he specialized in discrete strategic solutions, which seemed ironically appropriate. Rachel lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Monroeville, a 40-minute bus ride from her customer service job. She drove a 2008 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles, the kind of car that made concerning noises when accelerating. She'd started taking night classes in accounting at Community College of Allegheny County, a career where her past might matter less, where she could work with numbers that didn't lie. Every Google search of her name surfaced articles about the fake job divorce, as the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette had dubbed it, in a feature story about financial fraud in marriages. She'd wanted to be somebody important. Instead, she'd become a cautionary tale told at law schools and financial planning seminars. Emma graduated with honors, got a job with an environmental consulting firm, and maintained careful boundaries with both parents. She visited me and Sarah regularly, helped with our new baby, a son we named Daniel, and seemed to have processed the trauma into wisdom about trust and verification. "I run background checks on everyone I date now," she told me once, half joking. "Credit reports, too." "That seems extreme," says the man who documented Mom's lies in color-coded spreadsheets. Fair point. She visited Rachel monthly, usually for coffee at a Starbucks halfway between their apartments. Their relationship had stabilized into something functional but forever altered. The mother Emma had admired for her career success, for her ability to balance work and family, had been fictional. The real Rachel was someone who'd chosen elaborate deception over simple truth, excitement over stability, passion over family. "The thing about elaborate deceptions," Dr. Patterson had said during our final therapy session, after learning the truth through the news coverage, "is they require enormous energy to maintain. The truth just has to exist. Lies need constant support, like a badly designed building that needs extra braces and supports to keep standing." She was right. Rachel had exhausted herself maintaining fiction while I'd simply collected facts. She'd built elaborate infrastructure for deception, fake email accounts, rented office space, hired accomplices, managed schedules. I'd just documented reality. Bank statements, timestamps, IP addresses, security footage. In the end, patient truth had defeated dramatic lies. The fake job had been Rachel's masterpiece of deception, 8 months of method acting in her own life. But its exposure became my masterclass in patience. Not revenge, but consequences. Not drama, but documentation. Not satisfaction, but justice, served as cold as the Italian food I'd carried into Brennan and Associates that October afternoon, expecting to surprise my wife with lunch, and discovering instead that she'd been surprising me for the better part of a year. My new life with Sarah was built on verified foundations. Her hospital employment confirmed with a background check. Our financial accounts transparent and shared. Our whereabouts always known. We had a shared calendar that synced to both our phones, showing every appointment, every meeting, every surgery or engineering consultation. It lacked the excitement Rachel had craved, the mystery she'd found essential, but it possessed something more valuable: the ability to sleep peacefully, knowing the person beside you is exactly who they claim to be. Sometimes I wondered if Rachel ever regretted choosing elaborate deception over simple truth, if she missed the stability she'd mocked in her journal, if she understood that I hadn't been boring but reliable, hadn't been oblivious but trusting, hadn't been weak but patient. Her journal had called me predictable, as if that were an insult. But predictability meant keeping promises. It meant showing up. It meant being the same person in private that you were in public. It meant that when you said you were at work, you were actually at work. But mostly, I didn't think about Rachel at all. She'd become what she'd pretended to be: a former employee, terminated for cause, whose position had been eliminated and wouldn't be restored. The only difference was that this time, the termination was real. The cause was documented in court records, and the severance had been paid in full through 60 monthly installments of consequence. Salvatore's, the Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date, closed 2 years after the divorce. The owner retired, the building became a yoga studio. I drove past it with Sarah once, and she asked if it made me sad. No, I said honestly. It was never as good as I remembered anyway. Just like my first marriage, a beautiful facade hiding structural damage that no amount of renovation could repair. Better to document the damage, demolish completely, and build something new on solid ground. Something real, something verified, something true. The engineering principles I'd learned at Carnegie Mellon had served me well in divorce. Document everything. Test all assumptions. Never ignore structural weakness. And when collapse is inevitable, control the demolition to minimize collateral damage. Rachel had wanted to feel alive. She'd ended up professionally dead, financially crippled, and emotionally isolated. I'd wanted to save my marriage. I'd ended up saving myself, protecting my daughter, and building a better life on the ruins of deception. The fake job had lasted 8 months. The consequences would last forever. And somewhere in a one-bedroom apartment, a woman who'd wanted to be somebody important was learning the hardest lesson of all: that authentic nobody is better than fraudulent somebody, but by the time you learn that lesson, it's usually too late to matter. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just patient documentation of truth, filed properly with the appropriate authorities and allowed to unfold according to procedure. The results aren't cinematic, but they're thorough. They're complete. They're permanent. And unlike elaborate deceptions, they don't require any infrastructure to maintain. They just exist, solid and undeniable, like the engineering principles that govern the real world. The world where actions have consequences, lies have limits, and patient truth eventually defeats dramatic deception. The last time I saw Rachel was at Emma's college graduation. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes replaced with department store basics, her confident stride diminished to a careful walk. We didn't speak, just nodded acknowledgement across the auditorium. Marcus wasn't with her. They'd ended years ago, each blaming the other for their mutual destruction. After the ceremony, Emma hugged us both, separately, maintaining the careful balance she'd perfected over the years. In the official photos, Rachel and I stood on opposite ends of the group, Emma between us like a bridge over ruins. Thank you for coming, Emma told her mother quietly. I wouldn't miss it, Rachel replied, trying to smile. I know it's hard being here, with everyone knowing. Rachel's composure cracked slightly. Everyone knowing is the easy part. Living with what I did, that's the hard part. It was the closest she'd ever come to genuine accountability. Not, I'm sorry I got caught, or I'm sorry you were hurt, but an acknowledgement of action and consequence. Sarah and I took Emma to dinner afterward at a new restaurant downtown, talking about her job prospects, her apartment search, her plans for the future. Normal family conversations built on normal family trust. No one had to verify anyone's whereabouts. No one had to fact-check anyone's stories. No one had to maintain elaborate deceptions. You know what I appreciate most about you and Sarah? Emma asked over dessert. The boring honesty. No drama, no secrets, just truth. That sounds like a backhanded compliment, Sarah laughed. No, it's not. After what happened with Mom, boring honesty is the most valuable thing in the world. Do you know how exhausting it is? Wondering if people are who they say they are? I thought about the fake business card still in my desk drawer, the one that said, Rachel Kowalski, Senior Marketing Analyst, Brennan and Associates. A lie preserved in cardstock, a reminder that even the smallest deceptions could be part of elaborate frauds. Yes, I said quietly. I know exactly how exhausting that is. 5 years after the discovery, 10 years after the affair began, 15 years after we'd promised to love and honor each other, the story had reached its conclusion. Not with dramatic confrontation or passionate reconciliation, but with paperwork and consequences, restitution and rebuilding. Rachel got her excitement, the thrill of deception, the rush of secret meetings, the adrenaline of maintaining multiple identities. But excitement, I'd learned, was like structural stress, thrilling until the moment of collapse, and then it was just debris to clean up. I got my justice. Not revenge, but accountability. Not satisfaction, but resolution. The kind that came from patient documentation and proper legal channels. The kind that left no room for doubt about who was responsible for the collapse. Emma got the truth. Painful but necessary, destructive but ultimately liberating. She knew exactly what had happened, why it had happened, and who was responsible. No comfortable lies, no protective fictions, just documented fact. Sarah got a husband who'd learned to verify as well as trust, to document as well as love, to maintain transparency even when it felt unnecessary. Our marriage was built on foundations tested by weight-bearing calculations, stress-tested against deception. And Marcus? He got what he'd always gotten, temporary pleasure followed by permanent consequences. His business diminished, his reputation destroyed, his wealth consumed by penalties and legal fees. He'd played corporate executive while running a two-person consultancy. He'd played devoted partner while maintaining multiple affairs. He'd played successful entrepreneur while committing tax fraud. The IRS and the legal system had ended his performance permanently. The building where it all started still stands. Brennan and Associates thrived after the merger, expanded to 2 more floors, won awards for their marketing campaigns. Sometimes their work appeared on billboards around the city, professional and glossy, the kind Rachel had once claimed to create. But she hadn't created anything. She'd destroyed a marriage, a career, a family's trust, a daughter's innocence, a husband's faith. All for 8 months of playing someone she wasn't, of living in a fiction that felt more real than reality. The Italian food from that October day had long since been disposed of, The roses had wilted and been composted, but the lessons remained. Trust but verify. Document everything. And when someone shows you who they really are through their actions rather than their words, believe them the first time, because the second time might cost you everything you thought was real and leave you standing in a corporate lobby with cold food and dying flowers, discovering that the person you loved never really existed at all. They were just another piece of elaborate infrastructure in someone else's deception, a supporting character in someone else's performance, a detail in someone else's lie. But truth, boring and predictable truth, built properly and maintained honestly, could weather any storm. It didn't need project management software or co-working spaces or fake email accounts. It just needed to exist, documented and verified, filed properly with the appropriate authorities. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.